Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little time on. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our coverage in general. So WWDC, we had NAM, we've got Cinegear coming up. I was in Infocom. We had like 4 things going on this week. So we'll talk about all of those things. So if you have questions or comments or things you want to talk about there, throw those into the second hour questions. All of the above. I know it says WWDC on the email, but it's really all of the above. All right, let's jump into the questions. Go ahead, Mitchell.
David Paskins here with our first question. He's from Miami, Florida. What would your minimum specs be for a dedicated streaming computer? What should people look for in a streaming computer?
Go ahead, John.
I would want a minimum of an RTX graphics card. They have a special encoder on them that is specifically formatted for INVEC. So if you're using OBS or any other thing, that's definitely something I would use. A 10700K from Intel would be my choice of CPU, and I would want at least 16 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, I think that for me, it would depend on what kind of streaming. Do you want to run OBS or other software on it, or do you just want it to stream? So just streaming is a more straightforward process. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I was just thinking, what would be the best OS to run? Linux, Windows, Mac?
Again, I think it all depends. I mean, I think that for an average person that wants to do it, my general sense is to just use AWS and a link. And the reason is it's $1,000. It does have an incremental cost. If you do it as often as we do it here, it adds up a little bit, a couple $100 a month to pay for it. But if you're only doing something once a week, it's literally almost noise as far as the cost of production. It's super easy to use. You just plug it in. Once the thing is set up in AWS, you just push a button and go. You just have to remember to turn it off. So anyway, and if you don't turn it off, it costs you $1.50 an hour, to let it just sit there. So it's really, really easy. Overall costs are good. It's just easy people don't have to think about it. Obviously, if I was going to do it, I'd probably end up using Mac OS. I just get a Mini. A Mini's got all the power it needs to be a streaming box. So you can definitely encode with that. But there's also, we're going to probably have Streambox on in the not too distant future to talk about what they do. That might be another option, but the all-in-ones are pretty good. I know some people use the Epiphan Pearl. It's a lot more expensive. So but you can use that as well. So, but I like having computers that are dedicated to streaming. Like, I don't want them to do the edit. I don't want them to do any graphics. I don't want them to do anything else. I just want them to take video and put it on the internet. And so when you get into that, having a dedicated piece of hardware that just does the thing is really useful. So anyway, that'd be my recommendation. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. I'm trying to find a mini PC with dual HDMI, dual Ethernet if possible, that can power off USB-C power bank for digital signage and zoom display. Any suggestions?
I think that the B-Links by Courtney. Courtney's isn't here with us today, but I think the B-Links are probably, or something like those, are probably a pretty good bet. I think they have. I don't know if they have 2 Ethernets. 2 Ethernets is going to be the thing that you're probably going to have the hardest time finding in a small computer. It's just this is not a normal thing to have happen. That said, remember that you can also just put a USB to Ethernet adapter into any computer, so you can create that second connection by simply adding a USB. To Ethernet, and then you'll get two Ethernets out of that. So with that said, I think that the B-Links or something similar to that would probably be a pretty good solution. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, Zixi seems like a very expensive product. Would there be a low-end user license for users to become familiar with it in their own labs?
Yeah, what's expensive is the receiver. The encoder, I believe, is still free. It's the decoder that costs money. I think that we'll see what we can do. See if they'll give us some time to play with it. I know some folks over there, so we can see what we can do there. But it's really powerful. It costs money because they spend a lot of money on making it work. so it's, but it's still the best solution. Now, I will say that in most environments, SRT is 90%, 95% the quality of Zixi. So you can do a lot with SRT and figure a lot of things out. The Zixi really it's only better than SRT in challenging bandwidth situations where the bandwidth may fluctuate dramatically and may also get, go low, like below 4 megs a second. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about Zixi before. Is it go Zixi, then AWS out in the cloud, and then out to the
well, AWS in the cloud. The links use Zixi. So when you get a link, you're actually using Zixi to get to the cloud right now. AWS adds a little bit more pixie dust to it, but Zixi it's a little bit better. It's actually a little bit better than Zixi because of what they do to it. Because they own both. The big thing that AWS has is they own both sides. They have the server and the hardware, so they can constantly so server defined encoders like the Elemental links, like the Wowza Clearcaster. All of those are what they do is they check in and they're told what to encode and how to encode it, and that makes a big difference. And so all of those are going to be a little bit better. Yeah, but other than that, again, 99, well, not 99, but 95% of the time, SRT will do the job. It's just that it's that last 5% is where Zixi really makes a difference.
And Zixi is really good at readjusting the stream depending on what your bandwidth needs are.
In real time. Yeah, in real time. Yeah. Next question.
Next question is for me. It said the entire Cinealta line of Sony cameras can be made to match. Does that mean my little Sony FX3 can shoot B-roll for the Sony Venice II?
It should. If does that little FX3 have a LUT? And it doesn't have LUTs, does it?
No, it does, and it also has similar filter settings that the Venice has, like Cinetone, things like that.
And is the FX3 considered a Cinealta?
It is indeed. It's the low end.
Now, when you do the corrections, do you get like R minus G and G minus R and G minus B and B minus G? Do you see those in your little color correction?
I cannot honestly tell you.
Yeah. So
I just pushed the button on the menu and there it is.
The larger Cinealtas have a very, very odd, not odd. It was funny. When Blackmagic came out with their color correction, I was like, well, these are fine cameras, but this is a totally messed up way to do this. And how can you correct any camera without B minus R and R minus G? And like, that's how you did it. Because what happened is that in a vector scope, I'm going to get this wrong. I have too many edges, but anyway, so it should be 6. Anyway, so the, it's going to drive me crazy. So I think it's 6 anyway. So now that I did it, it doesn't look right. So you have these points here. And the G minus R and R minus will pull, because what will happen is your color will look like this in the vector scope, and it'll actually give you the way to pull these out to where they need to be. And so those corrections can pull all the markers out so that they'll match the markers that need to be there. And so that's what those settings inside the Sony camera will do. The problem is that we found over time that's to make the camera accurate, not to make it look good. And so what we found was that being clinically accurate, which is a lot of what you see in broadcast, isn't what we wanted for our shows. We wanted it to be a little warm, or we wanted it to be a little cool. We wanted to have a certain look to it. When that happened, we know, and we got more into this once we had the Blackmagic cameras, but when that happened, the vector scope didn't matter anymore. What we had to do is get one camera to look exactly the way we want it and then match all the cameras to it. You can match, if you have relatively good controls, you can match almost any camera to another camera, but the easiest way to do that is with LUTs. So if you can do a lookup table, the lookup table is far more accurate than any kind of paint that you're going to have inside that camera. And so what you want to do is you got to have a good chart, whether that's a X-right chart. The one that's the easiest for me to work with is the R24 or the 24R from the Demont. The Demont chart is the DSC Labs Demont chart, to be specific. Resolve will get you very close very quickly because it has an automatic setting for that one. But even if you don't get the smaller 12R, you can basically do a transition and cut through the chart so that you have the output of one camera overlaid to the output of another one. And what I'm actually have gotten into in Resolve is actually just corner pinning one camera over the capture of another camera, and then setting the top one the difference, and then sitting there and making adjustments to the LUT until they're both black. You know, once they're both completely black, it means that those cameras are going to look exactly the same. And then you load that back in and test it. And it takes like 8 cameras will take me a day to get done. And so it's not something that is fast. But once you have it, now you have to do that with those lenses on them. What you don't have to do is do them with a certain kind of lighting. So that LUT should work across all lighting. When you make that work, and I test it in different lighting to make sure. That's the great thing about the newfangled bicolor that people have now, because that was always a bit of a challenge. Is you only had one color space, but you can test that now, and it should line up all the way through with a good LUT. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, the S Cinetone I have checked against from my FX3 up to it wasn't a Venice II, but it was regular Venice, almost identical in terms of what it did. So it's obviously a LUT setting. But to answer your earlier question about the RG-BX, whatever you had, Sony menus are horrible. They just don't get it.
It is one of the things that I really love about, there's a lot of things that I don't love about Blackmagic cameras, but one of the things I love about it is the interface. It's a deep interface. There's a lot of things that you can get wrong, but there's so much more visual after a decade and a half of doing things with goofy little menus. It's really a breath of fresh air.
And the battle of cameras, by the way, I just want to mention that the new Arri is picking
We're looking at
Sony.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get it into. We're hoping to get the new Arri. It's a Super 35 Arri, so it's not full frame. It looks like it's leaning heavily towards quality of pixels, so it's 17 stops of dynamic range, which is amazing. It is not going for a higher resolution, so it's it's like 4K plus. So it's not trying to hit 6K or 8K. It's really doing a 4K plus look, and it looks like it's much more driven towards video. So it's more of a video pipeline. So a bunch of us are looking at it. We haven't tested it yet. We're hoping to get it. I'm actually hoping to get it in so that we can all look at it together on our stage. So we'll stay tuned for that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it looks really good. It looks like the best release that Arri's made in a little bit. We'll have some clients that don't want to do something with Super 35. They think it's too small as far as a frame size, but I think it could work really well. Next question.
From Andre Dole in Berlin, does the panel have experience with Hopin as virtual event platform? Any opinions?
Most of what we've heard recently, at least, is that Hopin's kind of gone off a cliff. It's not they're kind of spiraling down. So I think the big thing is that this is the mistake that I think a lot of event companies made, was they tried to make their event work and sound like a physical event, which is fine when there's no physical events. But now you're saying I have a facsimile of the thing that you can do on your own. Like I have a poor fax. You can build the original. Why would you use Hopin? And that was the fundamental error that a lot of these companies made, was trying to rebuild physical events was a fool's errand, because once the physical events came back, you don't need them, as opposed to building truly digital native events, which there's a lot of different ways. And I think that Zoom is much more positioned for that. I haven't seen any of these platforms that I thought were particularly compelling, because the thing that people miss is that what really matters is the interaction and the content. And people actually, it can be a simple set of windows as long as you figure out how they're going to interact. But you don't have to build there's a lot of companies that are making actually pretty good return on the vanilla Zoom because they figured out how to build good content, and they figured out how to actually make people feel like they're connected inside of that. But it doesn't have to be, you don't need all the newfangled technology to make that work. It's nice we'll build prettier things. We've built prettier things by adding something to what Zoom does, but there's a lot of groups that are doing pretty good just with vanilla version. Next question.
David Paskin in Miami, Florida asked, did anyone else order the Rodecaster Pro II, and any interest in a setup party and after hours? I know I'll need help.
Did you get it, David? Is it in?
No, hopefully it should be here June 15th. So I'm hoping next Wednesday.
Ooh, how much is it again?
It's like $6.99, something like that.
Wow. It looks really good. I haven't invested in it, but it looks really cool. Mitchell?
Yeah, it's I got to buy magnet. I mean, I looked at it, saw those flashing lights and those meters, and
You saw
it's
the
like,
pretty pictures. Oh, look at the
pretty
lights.
pictures. It looks like a Fisher Price, but I don't care. Courtney also got one too, so we can have a party, David.
I think a party's necessary. Once you guys have them, definitely let us know. We'll set up a second hour, and we'll have you guys. We'll do it as quickly as we can after all three of you have it. So that the goal will be to get it, without too much prep already. So yeah, go ahead, John.
Mitchell took the words out of my mouth. Courtney bought one. I don't know if he got it. He ordered it from a guy supposed to come in this month sometime.
Next question.
Next question from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. What external Blu Ray recorder do the panelists recommend?
Do they make those? I don't. Maybe they make Blu Ray recorders. I don't know. I guess there's a software for doing it, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, go ahead, Mitchell.
It's funny that it's a question that comes up every once in a while, and you look around and you say, somebody took all the Blu Ray recorders, because I haven't had a need for one and even thought about one. And I use my Plex store to do all my recording, but a standalone Blu Ray, no, I don't know.
I was trying to think about the last time I saw a Blu Ray. Well, I have one. I have one for Goodin, because you can't buy it on the digital things because China frightens everybody from actually putting Goodin on their services. So you can buy the Blu Ray after 5 years or something. So I have that one Blu Ray. And I bought a Blu Ray play out to play that one Blu Ray. And Henry V, Kenneth Branagh's Henry V is also hard to find. So I have two Blu Rays and one Blu Ray player for that. But that's my entire experience over the last 8 years or so, I think. Next question.
TJ Asher from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Can Chris Fenwick cover the physical aspects of what makes a good quality Apple box or tall maker? There was great discussion before the show, but we could not see anything.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. We're expecting a deep answer here.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I've actually been working on a drawing.
Wow, there we go.
So, is this okay?
Do it. No,
Here we go. Here we go.
I'm in. We're cruising through the questions. We're way ahead of the producers.
First of all,
I just want to say for the producers, you can stack up questions right now. We're burning through these questions, so you can ask more questions, but we have plenty of time for Chris to share, and I'm very curious about this. So that's all
first of all, this is a tall maker, which is my version of an Apple box. It's got the handle just like the Matthews Apple box does, but on the other side, it has what I like to call, affectionately, the smart hole, because it allows you to store stuff inside it. The thing about building anything out of wood is that you either depend on the strength of the wood or you depend on the strength of the fastener. They're very good. Yes, you have a legit Matthews Apple box. That's the one to buy if you're not going to buy a tall maker. Right. Now, if you look carefully inside that, Mitchell, you'll be able to see that I'm fairly certain that the interior walls on the Matthews are actually doubled up. And there's multiple reasons for having them double up, not the least of which is it puts the center spine, by cutting this piece of wood the right length, you automatically get the center spine right in the center. But because transferring weight through the wood and not depending on so like, let's say, for example, this is the vertical, and then I'm going to put another piece of wood on top of it. For this to collapse, it means the wood has to just crumble. But if I have the vertical here and then I screw this in like this, if the screw fails, it breaks. And the wood is stronger than the screw, okay? So by putting these center spines in, which I don't do, mainly for weight and cost, by putting, not the center spine, I do have a center spine, by putting this extra thickness right here, it means that even in what people like to call the New York orientation, which means you're standing at 20 inches tall, you have wood stacked on top of wood, stacked on top of wood all the way through. If without this other interior wall, this one, you would have to depend on the fastener. Disclaimer, tall makers don't have that second thickness on the inside, but it does have the smart hole, so you can store stuff inside it. I don't know if that makes sense. I've explained that to people many times, and the response I get always is this glazed over, I don't know what you're talking about. So I don't know if that makes sense about stacking wood on top of wood as opposed to trusting a fastener. But if you look at like workbenches, quite often they're built wrong, where they're depending on that fastener for strength. And it's silly. When I make a workbench, I have solid wood from the top of the bench all the way down to the ground. And it's maybe infinitely stronger. It's just way stronger as opposed to depending on a fastener.
Infinite is such a large word, such a big word. Go ahead, Bill.
So those of you might want to know that any grip crook worth its salt will have multiple apple boxes in it. You can ask for a quarter apple, a half apple, a full apple. And the apocryphal possible, and a pancake, that's right. The possibly apocryphal story that I heard about how these came about was that there was an actor and an actress who had to do a scene in early Hollywood, and the actress was of tall stature and the actor was of small stature. So they literally took a box that had been used for apples, turned it over to raise her enough so that they were eye to eye for the romantic scene. And that name stuck, but they said it's unstable, so they started building their version of a decent apple box. Again, I don't know if that's absolutely true, but it's a great story.
There's got to be a museum somewhere where they have the original apple box. Here it is. This is the apple box that they measured. They're like, how big? Oh, just make it the same size as that apple box. And then from that, and then literally that's how things happen. You know, like the CD, the rumor is that they walked into Sony and they walked into executives and said, how much data should the CD be able to hold music? And he goes, it's like Mozart's Fifth. Like that's 72 minutes long. And that's why the CD was 72 minutes long. So it's just because that was the goal.
What's interesting is when I made the first prototype apple box, tall maker, I bought a Matthews and used that as a guide.
Right.
I then went and showed it to a grip friend of mine, and he dug out an apple box that was these old apple boxes are at least 30 years old, like a minimum of 30 years old, maybe closer to 40. And they are exactly the same width and exactly the same height. Yeah. So this is a standard that's been around for a long,
well, I can
long
imagine
time.
if you made the size different, you would really screw up everything. Like it would, like by an inch, people would be upset. Like it would be
by a quarter of an inch.
Yeah,
it would
people
be
would
bad.
be upset. Yeah,
did exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Chris, you could grab the name Robert Stacker for the tall maker version for old actors. That were
we
short.
did toy with the idea of making the various size tall makers by branding them, by saying, oh, this is a Tom Cruise, this is a Danny DeVito, this is a, so like, and as much as we make fun of Tom Cruise's height, he's not the shortest of the traditionally short actors.
Next question.
Next question from David Paskin in Miami, Florida. His question is, I'm curious about continuity camera. I guess that's the new one that Apple just introduced, and how we might be able to leverage the functionality if it actually works with switchers, hardware or software. For example, grabbing both camera shots separately, etc.
I have a feeling at first it's going to do one thing, and that's just be a good web camera. I'll be surprised, happily surprised, if it supports more than one camera at a time. I think Apple is it does support it for Apple with the API that you can use the wide, but I think getting into a switcher would be difficult. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, the side-by-side shot where you've got the talking head and then you've got the desk view. I was curious about, can we choose one of those or either of those views as the virtual webcam, or You know, I'm curious about how we can manipulate that.
I do think that the one app that I expect it to work pretty well with is Keynote. You know, Keynote now has, you know, they have the camera inputs. I have a feeling that the controls or the ability to tie it in will be pretty well placed, just because that's easy for Apple. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Maybe that's a job for Filmic Pro to develop a D whatever it is filter to make it look right.
Well, yeah, I think that Apple has some distortion that it seems to be doing already, and I think that Filmic Pro could do that. Shoot is another one that could potentially go down that path. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Next question.
Rick Combs from Columbia, Tennessee. We are installing 2 projectors in our auditorium and have decided not to have screens, but use the walls as screens. What is the best paint for this?
Go ahead, Bill.
This can get a little deep, and here's why. I mean, a lot of paints, a lot of neutral paints, either white or a kind of a neutral gray that doesn't skew either to warm or cool, can function. I will tell you that screen technology, there's the really good paint and the really good screens that you buy have a thing called gain, as how much light they reflect back, but it has to be reflected back the right way. And I know that a lot of the high-end screens have a compound called titanium dioxide, which is an interesting thing because it reflects back a little more light, but it doesn't give you the hot center. So what I would suggest as you do this is just throw up a projector early in the process and project a thing and look for these things. Look if the center is hotter than the outside ring. That is telling you something about reflectivity. Also, you may want to consider mounting your projector at a higher or lower angle and using the keystone correction function to get it squared so that you don't end up with the light coming at the same horizontal line back to the audience, because that can do those kind of hot spots and emphasize them. So, you know, it's not a huge, just paint it and try it and see if it works. But if you have those specific problems, there are ways you can change things to fix them. That's all.
Go ahead, John.
Bill's right. This is a very complex procedure to get it right. The screens have significant technology built in them for reflectivity. There is specific paint out there, but it's never going to be as good as a screen.
Go ahead, Chris.
Exactly that. This is a example of buy once, cry once. You'll do it. You may pick special paint, whatever. You're not going to like it. You're going to want to buy a screen. Just do it.
I will say that I had a studio that we did paint the wall with that, and everybody's right. It's not as good as the screen. It was convenient to have a you know, a 4,000 lumens, you know, 4K projector up against the, you know, projected against the wall. It did work okay. I mean, if given the option, I would definitely have a projection. I would definitely put a screen in if I had the option. The paint that we used was called paint on screen, and I can't remember which one that we used for that. But it was a lot of sanding, and then a lot of priming, then a lot of sanding, and then a gray primer. And then it was like 2 or 3 coats of this paint on screen, and so it was a lot of work. I mean, it took 2 weeks to do it, and at the end of it, I was like, oh, the screen would have been
closely related to paint on chalkboard.
Yeah, paint on. We've had, well, I don't have chalkboard. We've done paint on whiteboards, which work exceptionally well. We were at a big information company, and they had a lot of that, and I got this up, but it was super expensive. Like the stuff that we got was, I definitely could have bought an awful lot of boards instead of putting it on the wall. But it did work. Next question. Andre
Dole in Berlin with the question, why is a C-stand called a C-stand?
This is like the grip channel today. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so the ramp up to Cinegear, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. These are questions for tomorrow.
Cinegear primer.
So the original company back in New York who started making these stands was called Century. So Century stands is where they originally came from. Got shortened because nobody wanted to say Century.
There's other people wanted to make them.
That's right.
Yeah, like you can't keep on calling
it Century.
With your Matthews. Yeah, exactly.
There is also, I looked at, because I just wanted to check and see if there was any more thinking. So I looked on, and there was actually a cute little article on Wikipedia about something about coming from artists' stand, you know, another possible explanation. But everybody I know says, now Century stand, that's what it's all about.
The big drama is oftentimes whether it's going to be spring-loaded or whether you're going to have to tighten them on your own. I'm a big spring-loaded fan myself. I just find them a lot easier to break down and set up. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Aren't they also the inventor of the famous C47?
I do.
No, I heard a different story for that. I heard that was the catalog number in one of the big consumables catalogs in Hollywood, and that you would order a bag of C47s. But those are all apocryphal stories. Who knows?
Yeah, nobody knows. All right, next question.
Next question from Peter Rosado in Las Vegas, Nevada. The question is, given Apple did an M2 engine swap on the MacBook Pro 13, any speculation on why the same was not done for the Mini?
Yeah, I want to know. It's very expensive. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think they're enjoying the huge M1 Mini sales right now. They just want to keep that pipe going for now.
I think the problem is that sales on anything that's M1 now is going to be severely contracted now that M2 is out. That's the hardest part of that. I think they have to upgrade most of the system pretty quickly, because I know I won't buy any Mac Minis unless I have to now, because I'm now going to be waiting. Same thing with any MacBook Pros. So it's hard when you do a partial upgrade that a lot of people will just freeze and just wait for the upgrade. Go ahead, Tony.
I'm going to disagree with you, Alex, from this standpoint. I think that the M1 Mac Mini is the entryway for regular people, not office hour people, to get into the Apple infrastructure. And
but wouldn't it kill you if you bought an M1 this week and they release the M2 next week? Wouldn't that drive you crazy?
It would kill me.
14-day return.
Yes,
it would kill me, but it might not kill. It might not
kill them. It just might hurt them.
I just think that there has to be, I think Apple's strategy is that they have to have a way to get regular people into the Apple infrastructure with everything that's going on, because the people that I interact with, they would be more than happy with an M1.
Right.
And so I think that the M1 is going to be that very basic machine, and it may at some point, go graduate to the M2. But I just think that for regular people who are really trying to figure out, for teachers, for people who want to be able to do some streaming, want to do basic functions and actually make it work with their iPhones. And it is, I think, a perfect way to get into that infrastructure.
Good, John.
There's a room full of actuaries at Apple figuring all this stuff out, and you will see an M2 Mac Mini. They were super frustrated with Intel not developing fast enough in their product cycles, and so right now they're blowing everybody out of the water. You'll see M2 Mac Minis come in a short period forward.
I think it might happen in the next 6 weeks, but I'm not going to do any more betting about it. I'm talking to you, Fenwick. Anyway, so but I think in the next 6 weeks is a high probability, but definitely by November 1, I'll bet that there's going to be. I'll bet. You want to do another bet?
The fact that they introduced the M2 in the laptop.
Double or nothing, Alex. Double or nothing.
Double or nothing. Fenwick.
The fact that it kind of blows all of my logic out of the water. So I got lucky. I just figured they would go M1 through the whole product line before they recycled and started going M2 in the Mac Mini. That's why I was pushing the bet the way I won. But the fact that they're selling M2s, M1s, M1 Maxes, M1 Ultras, and Intel machines right now today, 5 different.
It's very
chaos.
un-Jobs. Well, I will say that the Apple is doing exactly what Steve Jobs came in to stop them from doing, which is they're creating confusion.
I loved the Matrix.
Yeah.
Pro desktop, consumer desktop, pro laptop, consumer laptop. Yeah. Stop.
And I do find that I feel like I'm getting back into where I was when I was in the 90s, when I was like, I don't know which machine to buy right now, so I won't buy any. Like it's like I'm gonna hang on to what I have because I'm now confused. And I think that Apple, I do think it was a big mistake not to rev everything at DubDub. They should have revved the laptop and the Mac Minis. Maybe not the studio just came out, but I think that, I think it was a mistake not to get everything up to speed. Go ahead, Bill.
So I'm going to try to make everybody feel better if you're really worried about that. I'm buying it the wrong time a week. So 2 laptops ago, I had a job in California that I had to go to, and I was at about 3.5, I was about 3 years into my old laptop. So I thought, I got to do this, and I got to do it for this job because I've got to be productive. So I spent a chunk of money on the top end MacBook Pro. 3 days after I got back, they introduced the new models, which was what I would have bought if I had waited. And for one day, I felt miserable about it. Then I realized, I looked back, and from this vantage point, I got 3 years out of that machine that I bought the day before the new ones came out. It performed beautifully, and I got all my work done, and I made a ton of money on it. And so looking back, I stopped thinking to myself, if I don't get this just right, I'm going to be destroyed. You're not. Right. It's an incremental, nice thing to upgrade, but it's not critical.
It is critical. Go ahead, Mitchell. Real quick, Mitchell.
I think Fenwick is making enough side bets to fund the M2 Mini when it comes out.
Next question.
TJ Asher from Minneapolis, Minnesota. The question, Final Cut Pro editors, best way to eliminate wind noise from audio where folks are talking. Plug in, other separate processing, whatever. Yes, I did say best. Okay, now give me something we can all afford.
Good, Bill.
Well, if it's real-time processing you're looking for, I will say that Apple just added a new feature called voice isolation. You should just give that a quick try because it has astonished me the couple of times I've needed it. It takes care of a lot of things, and I would guess that wind rumble, since it is such a known entity, is something that they applied that to. If not, you're looking at applying high-pass filters because wind rumble is usually in the low end of things. The careful thing you have to be when you're dialing it in is just make sure you're not eating too much into the voice if the voice has a lot of low resonance, so that you make somebody who has a naturally deep voice sound thinner, or even worse, that terrible sound of notch filtering that comes from too much processing.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Couple of things. Number one, in today's day and age, I am shooting so much stuff that is client supplied via a phone. And this is a standard recipe that I do all the time. I take that phone footage, I do what's called a dual mono pass on the audio. You can do that in the audio inspector. I then turn off one of those because the stereo, you don't need all that. The voice isolation, dial that up to about 69, 70, and then mess with your gain. Now, in terms of getting rid of the wind noise, the best way to do that is to shoot indoors.
I was going to say
100%.
I was going to say 2 words: dead cat. Now, for those of you out there that don't know what a dead cat is, it's not a dead cat. It's a fuzzy covering for your shotgun.
Looks like
mic.
a dead cat.
It just does look. It does look a little like a dead cat. So I wonder if they make one in calico. Anyway, so it's a big fluffy thing that's on the outside that will tend not to pick up. Sorry, I'm now obsessed with the idea of having dead cats actually look like cats. Anyway, but they call it a dead cat, and basically it is it's just fluffy, and you'll see these a lot, and that's the best way to get rid of wind noise is to have that over top of your mic. Second best way, the best way being shooting indoors. So that's the best way. The second best way is a dead cat. Third best way is some kind of filtering. Next question.
And it comes from Vic Sinise in Lowell, Indiana. Can you use Stream Deck to trigger macros on the Atem Mini?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yes, you can. I use a MixFX Pro and the companion to talk to my Stream Deck, and you can stack macros up to the dogs come home. Cows, dogs, cats.
And then also I would also look at MixFX. MixFX Pro has lots of automation tools that you can use a Stream Deck. You can also use a lot of other things. So MixFX Pro, I find that you should just budget that you're going to buy an Atem and then you're going to buy that software, because it literally transforms your switcher into something different because of the power that it has internally. So I would highly recommend it. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Alex, yesterday I asked a question about your telestrating setup. There were 2 other options shared in Discord after office hours. Would it be possible to do a demo of all 3 methods maybe on a Saturday?
Yeah, we just have to organize who wants to do that, but that could be something we could organize just in the second hour, and just have a little bit of a 10-minute or 15-minute where each of us talks about it. Go ahead, Tony.
And I just want to add that we probably could add the David Paskin method as well as part of the telestrating.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it makes sense. Tony, I'm going to leave it up to you to collect the people that have different ways of doing it and tell me which Saturday we should do it, and we'll figure it out. That's what happens when you ask a question. You're on the panel. You'll get tasked. All right, next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. Has anyone else tried the overlays? It seems interesting.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so he's talking about overlays.uno, and I've got that up on my screen right now. It's nice. You can't save anything yet. So if you go over to overlays.uno right now, you can create whatever you want, but you can't say they don't have, it says register, but I registered, then nothing actually happens. So basically you choose, they have a ton of different templates. You choose the template you want, and then you can come in here and you can customize it. And then what it does is it gives you a key, as it were, an output URL. So then when you come into whatever streaming service that you might be using, not streaming service, forgive me, production platform you might be using, I use Ecamm Live, you just add that in as a web widget, basically. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting to me about it is that you can also share a control URL. So you can set up over here, the control URL, send it to someone else, they can log in, and then they can change it in real time, and you'll see it update on your website. So Alex is ahead by 1 right now.
Are you able to build your own custom versions, or is it just what the templates that they give you?
It's a good question. It looks like you have to start with a template. And then you can, over here, for example, if I wanted to use this template, I could change the flags, I could change the colors, I can change the text. You can also, they have multiple versions of each one, it seems. So you can have just the game score without the images. You can turn on the images. And then within your whatever software you're using, you could move it around or size it appropriately. But I don't think you can really customize it within overlays.uno itself.
I go to Chris.
I'll preface everything I'm about to say with, I might be wrong, but I think that this is using like HTML5, I believe it is, which is what Tuomo's software does. And I got to say, and this is an urgent plea, if I will, to our friends at Blackmagic. I don't have any friends at Blackmagic, by the way, but this technology of creating a web page, a web link that also has the alpha channel, which is what you can do, which is how you get Tuomo's graphic into like the OBS and other software-based switchers. I understand, Grant Petty, that you make hardware. I get it. I understand that you have all this stuff, but this is an immensely powerful way. It may not be the most robust, but it's an immensely powerful way of creating graphics. And in our world today, where we have people spread out all over the globe sometimes working on a project, the fact that I can, like this Uno thing, where I can give the control panel to a producer on the East Coast, the switcher may be on the West Coast or down under in your neighborhood, Grant, and somebody can be controlling the CG just through a web browser. That's super cool. And I would love to see a next gen of Atem switchers that have these things are practically computers anyway. So can we just do this? Take that stuff. You can get the key fill and the key source. It's just like a normal, all the stuff that the hardware you're already building, but it's embedded into a URL, and it would be a super cool feature if Blackmagic adopted this.
Next question.
TJ Asher from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Final Cut Pro editors, best way to reduce the volume or part of a clip. I want to have original sound on some of the clip and then cut the sound for the rest of it.
Go ahead, Bill.
They have a super simple way, Randy, when he designed the software, put this in. So if you're looking at your storyline and you can see the audio, make it big enough so you can see it pretty decently. But then literally all you have to do is tap R for range select, take your cursor, select the area that you want to get rid of, grab the audio line and pull it down. It's going to automatically do a bunch of things for you. It's going to put 2 keyframes at the beginning, 2 keyframes at the end. It's going to allow you to dip the stuff between them. And then as soon as you get that done, I mean, that's basically it, to dip an area. If you want to afterwards, you can go in and tap A for the select mode again and like move out the keyframes on the ends if you want a slightly slower, easier transition between the louder. But it's literally tap, drag, pull down, done. That's all you have to do.
You go ahead, Chris.
I would, Bill, you're 100% right, of course. But I would also add that once you do that range select on the audio, you can use, help me out, Bill, is it Option plus and minus or Command up plus and minus? You can use there's a keyboard shortcut to bump it up 1 dB at a time. Also, TJ and I spent some time on the Zoomer last night, getting him from iMovie to HDR Final Cut. Totally worked. Pretty cool. Somewhere in our future of office hours, I would like to figure out, and I realize I'm about to commit a bunch of my time, and it infuriates me.
You do it.
I want to do like a weekly time slot where we just answer the most basic, most mundane, I have no idea what I'm doing, questions about Final Cut. And I think that Apple should do this. Apple should pay for this. Like they should. I've been saying for a while now on Twitter and whatnot that they should hire Mark Spencer to just sit for 2 hours a day on Zoom and answer motion questions. And just pay him a huge amount of money and like, if you're willing to go on camera, ask your question and let him answer it, he'll even give you the project file when he's done. Oh, yeah, here you go. Here it's done. And like, it would just be an endless stream of tutorials and, you know, FaceTime and not the product, but, you know, interaction. But I think that I would like to do that for
I would
Final
say
Cut.
that if you had Mark Spencer and Alex Goldner sit there for a couple hours answering questions for you, like once a week, it'd be the best. It'd be the best money ever spent.
Killer.
Like those two, like because Mark's really good at explaining. Alex sends me motion files that expose to me that I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I've used this product since 0.9, and Alex Goldner will send me a project, and I'm like, I have no idea what he's doing here. Then he'll walk me through it, and it's like the most elegant way that you could possibly imagine to build a file. You know, it's really cool. And Mark is the person that I ask everything about. Like in the back end, I have that. I have the I don't know what I'm doing button. So Mark, I don't understand why this isn't working. I get this real quick. Like I did this whole thing with the I used to do this thing with my countdown clocks is I would do them all forward and then I'd reverse them. You know, that's how, you know, to get it to count down. And Mark, I told Mark that and he said, have you ever thought about keyframing the time? That was it. There was not a long explanation. Just have you ever thought of keyframing? My whole life was changed like overnight.
And again, there's got to be a name for this. Something Friday. Mm-hmm. Apple, our friends at Apple. I do have friends at Apple. You need to hire these experts, put them on a Zoom call. They can run it all outside of the Apple bubble. Mm-hmm. They go online and they sit there and people come in and they go, hey, I can't figure out how to make my audio go down. Oh, let me show you. I can't figure out how to keyframe my countdown clock. Oh, let me show you. Well, and you should hire the best motion people in the world. You should hire the best Final Cut editors in the world. You could get celebrity people to come in and sit in on it. Bring in Thomas Grove Carter. He would gladly sit for a couple of hours and answer people's questions.
Yeah.
And pay them immense amount of money.
And you could have it be different things that, different days or different things. Like for Final Cut, it's every week, let's say for Final Cut, but like having Mike Matzdorf, for instance, come in when you're talking about like, how do I build a big project in Final Cut? And he'll sit there and, you just start asking questions. And again, he knows a lot about structuring your system, really, really well. So I think that you could advertise, this is who's coming in and this is what we're doing. And anyway, so.
But it's not a lecture, Q&A and demo.
Q&A. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Mitchell.
In the interest of leaving no conversation behind, I think you should also include Premiere and Avid.
Sure.
I saw what you did there.
Next question.
Next question from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. I, of course, know about NTSC, field frames, reading a waveform, vector monitor, etc., but now I'm seeking the fundamentals of how digital video works, 720p versus I, buffer rates, H.264, etc.
Go ahead, Chris.
Vincent, nobody knows. Well, that's the answer. So when I was in an engineering class, I was sitting in the back of the room and the professor was explaining the front porch and the back porch and the sync pulse and the plugge. And he was going through how the waveform worked. And I raised my hand, and this guy was barely human, and he was not comfortable with human interaction. He taught his classes on Friday nights and Saturday mornings, so he made sure you had no social life while you were in school. And he was shocked that somebody was raising their hand in the class. And I said to him, I don't buy it. And he turns around and he looks at me. He's like, what are you talking about? I go, if you ask me, somebody, Philo Farnsworth, the inventor of television, found a camera, transmitter, and a receiver left over by an alien technology, alien life forms, and he's taking credit for it because this is way too complicated to have been invented in the 30s.
Anyway, we're going to go pretty quickly here because we engaged our producers to ask more questions, and now we're answering them really slowly, like we didn't have a lot of questions. Bill, real quick.
Real quick, this has changed so much because I spent 10 years as a contributing editor at Video Maker Magazine, and that was exactly our brief. Take complicated things, make it as simple as possible so everybody could come along. If you look back at some of those old articles from even 15 years ago, they will give you the basics because we were all trying to learn that stuff when it was first coming out. Today, you got to go on the web and look at all sorts of crud to get through to the good stuff. Sorry about that.
Mitchell.
Simplify it to best practices. I think that's a good way to do things.
And ask specific ones. It's really hard to answer any one of these, but if you ask these questions here, a bunch of us will at least have some opinions about it. I mean, I have to teach a lot of these, so I don't know if I know them all, but I can definitely talk to a bunch of these. But it's the best thing to do is I would say is ask them here and ask them early. So if you ask questions late in the evening or in the evening, after we've reset at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, gives us time to think about it. And there's a higher probability that, for me, I'll kind of try to think about how I'm going to draw it or figure it out. So, but I would ask the questions here as well. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, another point mentioned in the SVG article was the loss of one-on-one conversations with directors and producers in a remote workflow. Couldn't dedicated Unity, PLS, Zoom, breakout rooms preserve these conversations?
You definitely can. I mean, I think when a lot of us were doing a lot of stuff over COVID, we figured out ways to leave Zoom open a lot and sit there and talk back and forth while we were working. I don't feel like I lost that much having those conversations that way. Next question.
Again from Douglas, in an article from Sports Video Group, there's a link to it, about a recent ESPN broadcast. They mentioned remote production keeps crew from feeling the atmosphere of the event. Wouldn't a well-run remote-first workflow, see Belfast, preserve that?
I actually think that these are just people with old thinking. The thing is sure you can't feel it, but that you also don't have to deal with load-in. You don't have to deal with all the idiosyncrasies. I just did an event where it was really hard. It was much harder to incorporate someone into a back-end thing because they were at the location. Like they were at the location. Now I have to deal with the location bandwidth. I have to deal with where they're going to sit. I have to deal with the noise that's there. I have to deal with comms. All these things were much easier when they weren't there. So I would say that there's a handful of things, but having your crew feel something while they're doing it. Now maybe your announcers can be there, but having your actual crew there is actually harder, other than the people that need to touch something. But anybody cutting things, it's easier if they're not there. Next question. We're going to try to cut through a couple of these.
Robert Choji from LA. What cost-effective portable screen with stand do you recommend?
The one that's right behind me, I don't know, you could call it cost-effective. It's like $230 right now. It's now called a Manfrotto. It used to be a Lastalite. It's now a Manfrotto 6 foot by 7 foot gray screen with a black back. It is. There's a little holder that I don't know what it's called, but it's a little holder for it that goes onto a light stand or C stand, and it has little magnets, and you just snap it up. The total package cost is probably $500 with the stand and with the little thing that goes across the top and everything else. It's probably, well, maybe not $500, but maybe $400. Super effective. You can put it in your car and set it up in 10 minutes. Next question.
Michael Marsh from California. The fan in my MacBook Pro 2019 is always running, even on startup, before any apps are open. Activity monitor shows high CPU usage. What's going on?
Chrome. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it could be Chrome, but that self-same activity monitor will tell you what's running and what's popping up to the top of that list constantly. So that's going to be your hint as to what's grabbing all those CPU cycles.
Yeah, look for startups, like what apps are starting. When you're coming up to speed, that they may be using it. I will say iStat menu makes this kind of thing really, really easy. I would highly recommend getting iStat menu because it's just that you can do, there's a lot you can run top. You can open up. If you open up a terminal and you hit top, it'll just give you a list of everything that's being done. By the way, it'll also give you the what number, the app number, and you can say kill that number. Just make sure you're not killing something that's in your OS. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. It came up in Discord about several different methods of telestration since one of the methods involves Keynote. Would this be appropriate for the next Keynote lab?
Yeah, and I think that was asked earlier, and we'll definitely find a time to do it on a Saturday in one of the second hours. I have to admit that the educators have they wanted a little time off after some of the things that happened in Texas, and they just need. I think overall they need time off, and the summer was coming. I do not plan to schedule just because, given the time off, I only took one Saturday for me to go. I want the summer off, so we're not going to do anything throughout the summer in Saturdays. We'll just do the 2 hours. So anything we do there has to fit into the 2 hours. There won't be any labs. There won't be anything else on the weekends, just because I need some more time. so anyway, next question.
Darren Sorello, Dallas, Texas. I've got an old 20 megabyte hard drive from my first computer, an IBM PC XT from 1986. Is there a way that I can copy the data from this drive? I don't have the computer anymore.
I'll be honest, I would send it to somewhere like Drive Savers to do that. I wouldn't try to do it myself. That data is really old. That drive is really old. If it's really important to you, I would send it to a company. I would not try to run it, plug it in, turn it on. I would move it very carefully, and I would send it to a company that's designed to recover data off the drives from its raw format. But Drive Savers is probably the best known for that. It will not be cheap, so make sure that it's really worth it. Next question.
TJ Asher, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Final Cut Pro editors, how do I make clips on the timeline taller so I can see the audio channel a bit better?
Bill, you should be able to do this.
Yeah, I'm hoping Chris can help me on this because I do it all the time, but there is an interface control right on the center of the screen that allows you to determine clip height. That's just one of the things, but I can't remember right now. I do it, but I never think about it. Chris, do you remember where that clip height?
Yeah, TJ, we're going to cover that in the next episode of Learning Final Cut with TJ Asher. There's two ways to do it. Try Control Option plus and minus, and it might be up arrow, but there is, it's a little, it's almost impossible to describe it.
I'm trying to launch Final Cut
this
so I can see it.
I'm gonna try and pick an hour a week.
Yeah, please do.
Question.
You should test it. You should test this whole thing for us by doing it for a little while. Is just a week. A 9 o'clock time frame is a good time frame if you have it. Like a Monday at 9 a.m.
I don't know that that's a good time. I think evening might be better. Let's.
Well then, you tell me. We'll schedule it. We'll promote it.
I'll bet you $100, Alex, that we'll make this work.
So at the top of the interface, there's where it says all clips, 3 icons over, there's a clip height adjustment menu.
Okay, perfect. Next question.
James Haldane, Vancouver, Canada. Can anyone recommend a windsock for the Shure MX412 for outdoor use on a lectern? I can't seem to find anything suitable except the stock model that picks up wind noise quite easily.
The other thing that we've done in the past to make this work is build our own. So we oftentimes will get the windscreen. So in this case, this would be probably the RK412 WS is probably the one that comes with for that lectern. And then what we do is we go to Michael's Arts and Crafts, whatever they call it in your town, but they call it Michael's here. And you can actually get the little fluffy stuff that you would see on a dead cat. And we actually adhere it to the windscreen. It will drop some of your high-end response as you go through that, but you find it actually works pretty well, and it will reduce the wind noise a fair bit to do it that way. If you really want to get high tech about it, you won't wrap it. You'll set it on top and pull it down, and then you have to cut it. And you have to cut basically fins in it, and then have someone sew them together so that it fits properly. Otherwise, it'll either look bad or it won't really work because you'll have the top up. So if you wrap it around, you end up with a hole at the top. And if you push it down, you're going to have to slit it, like general upholstery, and pull it in to make it actually work. So it turns out to be an art project. Not that I've ever had to do it before. Next question.
Robert Shoji, LA. How can you automatically add captioning to a video project? Ideally in multiple languages.
Good, Bill.
Really quickly, it's not totally automatic, but you take your audio track from your project, you export it as an AIFF. There are a number of services. A lot of us use Simon Says. It goes up into the cloud. It does the translation. It comes back down. You can pull that caption file properly formatted into your timeline, and then you have captions. And often they can give you the choice of multiple languages that they'll deliver to you.
Good, Chris.
Robert, another way to do this is take your file, put it on YouTube, walk away, go have a sandwich, maybe go for a swim, whatever it takes. Come back in a couple hours or so. YouTube will closed caption the thing. In your back end of your YouTube channel, you can, and I'll admit it's a little tricky, I think, currently as at the date of this recording, June 10th, 2022, it's on the left-hand side of the back end thing. There's a thing, boom, 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 you click. You can download the SRT data from YouTube. It won't be perfect. It'll be pretty good, but it's certainly a cheap way to do it.
Yeah, I use Simon Says a lot. Here's what I really like about it is that it's an extension in Final Cut that just goes out, and when it comes back in, it goes into a caption track. I don't have to figure anything out. And the big thing is that what I find easier with Simon Says specifically is it goes out, when it comes back in, it's all lined up in time. The words may not be perfectly correct, but the timing is perfect, better than when we get it from a captioner. And so it's easier for me, in most cases, up to a couple hours, to sit there now and just watch it at a little faster than real time and just make corrections to the text, just go through or have someone do that. And then you get it fine tuned. Now, the Simon Says will also export multiple languages, but then we also want people to go in and tell us what worked and didn't work. I will say that I haven't used the Premiere handling tools for quite some time, but the Final Cut handling tools of multiple languages and captions is exceptional. Like they really spent an enormous amount of time and effort on it. Next question.
Frojan Banwell from San Diego, California. M1 Mac Mini had to reboot, started on audio tapping about 3 beats per second. Just before that, tabs began opening on their own in Safari. Never anything like this in Windows, Firefox, suspect PC gamers, web page ads.
Oof. If it has anything to do with, if your browser is doing something funny, then I will tell you that you probably have to grind your machine to the ground. It is not like if your browser starts doing things you don't expect, that is a grind the machine to the ground. That means, just wipe it out. And it's bad news. Bill, real quick.
Whenever I hear somebody say tapping in my audio, I immediately think sample rate conversion mess. So just pay attention to that. Yeah. That maybe took a 44.1 thing and transcoded it to 48 and did it badly.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Can't hear you. But we can see you.
Or, once again, take two. Or there's something stuck in your mouse and it's clicking on its own.
Next question.
Keenan Campbell, Princeton, Illinois. Speaking of the Final Cut Pro labs, can we start doing 1 hour simple labs about different items, i.e. Final Cut Pro, Atem, MixPre, etc.? Keep them simple and 1 hour, maybe streamed to YouTube for archive.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And we've been doing those. Ken Jordan has been doing them on Wednesdays. We've had other people, volunteer. Elle does them Thursdays in the afternoon. We're going to move that time, I think, to make it easier for everybody. Definitely interested in doing more of that. I would fill up all of the time with some special thing at this point, but we just need people to volunteer to do it. So if you're interested, let me know. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, which DAW would you recommend that would feel most like tape, basically recording the output of multiple hardware synths as raw audio tracks?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I used to love the AMS audio file. The dials on it were emulating a reel-to-reel tape machine. Some devices will do that with quick keys. You just hit the key, and it'll track across the waveform, very much like a tape machine would.
Here you go, John.
Brace digital. Don't replace. If you ever actually recorded it on a tape machine, you know how difficult it is once you get past the number of tracks and you start summing everything. Really just embrace the digital workflows and everything that gives to you.
Yeah, I mean, I would really think about just using a standard DAW. I mean, here's the thing is that I think you can get into like, I'm going to use this for this and that for that. I use Logic for almost everything that I edit. And the main thing is that even if I don't need it, it's way overkill for some things. I just want muscle memory in one app, that I know how to use. So I think that you got to decide if you want to do Pro Tools or Logic or other things like that, just pick one. And get good at using it, and just make sure that it kind of checks off the things that you're trying to check off. But using specialty apps for every single thing, just there's only so much time to build skill sets. All right, starting just a little late, but we didn't have a ton of questions to get started, so we went a little over to finish those last ones up. We are now jumping into the second hour. And we're going to be talking about not just the WWDC coverage, but also just generally, we've had a lot of coverage and a lot of events this week. So it seemed like Friday would be a good day for us to kind of follow up on it and talk about it. So if you have opinions or questions, let us know what you think about that. I think this isn't really more about WWDC specifically. It's more about the coverage and what we liked, didn't like. In the process or what we'd like to think about. It's the best time to think about how to make things better is right after they're done, rather than if we think about it in a month or two, it gets a little harder to come up with. So I think that, for panelists, feel free to jump in. And again, for those watching, go ahead and jump in. I think that we made big steps forward this week. I think we did a lot of really interesting things. I think that I'll give you my overview while we're seeing if anyone else wants to add anything to it or whether there's more questions. But I think that it was really interesting to see the very heavy approach to NAMM, much heavier than the way I've approached shows before. And that was very different for me to watch that. So it is, I think that I'd love to see us mix in a lighter approach as well. If I was going to pick between the two, I'd probably pick the lighter approach to it if I only had one. If I have two, I think the heavy approach is pretty awesome. Being able to kind of turn every thing into a stage is good. We just need more time. Like over 4 hours, like the approach that I've taken in the past, does 4 to 6 booths an hour. Like it's just like we're just cruising through them, and so I think that us being able to, if I picked one or the other, I'd probably pick that. I love the bigger kit, and I think the bigger kit needs to get bigger. Like instead of just a stand, I think it needs to be a rolling rack. Now that the team has proven that people are willing, I just never thought that anyone would let us actually do that. So that like that, the team showed me, Noah showed me that people will let you crank a big set through the thing. I've just never done that because I just think, oh no, people wouldn't let me, I couldn't get away with it. Turns out we can. So I think that the team learned a lot, or showed us a lot in that area. So I think that, from a NAMM perspective, it'll be interesting to see what we do with Cinegear, see how that goes and where that goes with it. I thought that the interviews were really good. I saw pieces of a lot of them. And I thought that they went really well, and we really were able to get in depth, to do that. And I almost feel like I want to bring some of them back and do second hours with them. So which is so I think that went well. I thought that the NAM coverage, and we'll see what Cinegear looks like, was a giant step forward from NAB, which was great. NAB was great. I think NAM took it to a whole nother level. We'll see where Cinegear goes, but I definitely feel like we're on the right track. As far as WWDC, I thought that there's a couple things. One is that the audio quality I thought was really good from the PR room at Apple. It just happened to be that Justine and Renee were down there already, and I had to find somewhere, make some request of like where to go to put them. I was having a hard time finding a location, for that process. But I think that the 2-up was a little hard. They're small in frame, and I think that we tell people not to do that, and I have to admit that I was like, oh well, pretty good, and we did it, and I was curious about it. I think that if I did it again, I'd want to have them in singles, to be able to do it. Just because all of our it also caused us to have to change all of our super sources, and it was one of those things that when it was suggested that I do a 2-up like that. At first, what happened is that Renee and Justine thought it would be really fun to be in the same room, and so then I was figuring out a 2-up, and then once I said 2-up, then there was a room that we could do 2-ups in that was easier, and I think that I would have, I think I'd stick with the singles on that. Although I thought that the conversation went really well. I think that the conversation overall of that was one of our, I think was an improvement over last year as far as the quality of the conversation. We had a couple less people because even here we started late. It's hard to get everybody ready to go at the last minute. We're used to here having an hour to get ready, and it's just hard to get other folks to be ready that quickly. They just don't understand what we're trying to do live. And then we had some issues with making Mokana available to a wider number of people to ask questions. And, logging in was just, as someone who hasn't logged in before, we just had some issues on the back end. So I was testing it over and over and over again all afternoon, giving Chris feedback. And that led to, and we were posting it in Discord. Thank you to everybody who was helping us get that figured out. People not being able to log in and iPhones and everything else. But what it led to was I had a whole bunch of hidden windows that all had the desktop version of Mokana up, because I was doing, so I was open because I was trying to log in, and then I was hiding those windows to get them out of the way. And so when we went live, of course, it auto played the live feed. All of them. So I was in there like, and finally I figured out, just make it go 0. I'm really glad that I, had the Scorpio here, because I could hit 0. You don't see it anymore on the page, because I cut it out. so anyway, I cut that part out. There's 2 things there that I figured out, was that, number one is I used to, when I was hosting a lot of things that I was streaming, I used to restart my computer every time before, just to make sure that there was nothing else running. Like, I just had this pattern of like doing that, and I didn't do that here because it was just for whatever reason I didn't do it. And so that was number one. I definitely always restarted Chrome, to make sure it worked. I think that the reason that it even came up was that I was managing Renee's stream as well. Like, I had built, we streamed to, the office hour system streamed to AWS, and then that was in AWS. I split it out and streamed to both Renee's page and our page, and that was easy. But it was because of that it was opened, and so anyway, so that was an issue. And I think I did the same thing the year before, because I was managing our stream back then. So I think that, if I remember correctly, we have to go back and look. I might have cut it out of that one too. But for some reason, I felt like this is the second year in a row that I've had that weird echo back into the system. So just because I'm managing it, and I should have handed it off to somebody else, and that was a silly thing for me to do. So anyway, so that's where that came from. I did find it excruciating as a host to not have the panel view. Like, I didn't. It is like it was, because what happened was, and this is the mistake that I made, was that I wasn't aggressive about getting. I didn't want to start creating other Mokanas and doing other things until after, I think, Saturday, the NOM session or whatever. I just was like, this will confuse a lot of people. And so I just didn't want to do anything new. I should have a week beforehand just built the other Mokana and had it all ready to go, because what happened is not everybody could log in easily. The login is the weakest part of our system. And so Renee was getting a black screen and the other guys were in a little late. And anyway, the issue is that I don't know now, like I don't even know how people run live shows without the panel view at this point, because it was like, I don't know who's going to talk next, and I cannot, and the problem is that with a technical show, with an opinion show, it doesn't really matter. You can decide it. On a technical show, if I throw you a technical question, you don't have an answer for it. It's not good for the show. So I was sitting there very like almost reading the tea leaves the whole time. And when I finished it, I was like, I'm never doing another show without that. One of the things that there's been a request, and we're gonna create a simplified version of the panelist view so that there's only one column and the panelists. I just need panelists to be able to raise their hand, because it's now a crutch that is more than a crutch. It's like a life support from as a host. And so that was an interesting thing that I felt like I learned that I didn't expect. I probably would have added one more developer to the Monday night one. I thought that the Tuesday and Wednesday ones went really well. The Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, with having a bunch of developers talking about their opinions, I thought was pretty deep on Tuesday. And I thought that Joshua did a really good job on Wednesday of really talking through those things. And that one was really popular. And I don't know exactly, like I saw the numbers when we finished it, it was almost as popular out of the gate as the Monday night session. So it was the 3D one had more traction than I expected. Probably didn't need Thursday. We just didn't have developers to talk to it. We were able to talk to a bunch of things, but I think that Thursday I'll probably just bulk up on more. We had some developers identified and they just weren't able to make it. So that was a little bit off, but that's from the WWDC one. And then finally, my last little review is that I think Infocom went well, a little sparser than I usually do things. So it was, I think that it was a lot of work for Sam though, and it illustrates why I don't like going to events, is because trying to integrate into a local AV system of anything is just a pain. So I think that he just had to wrestle with the local integration there. I was glad that he had to do it and I didn't have to do it. But I thought it was really fascinating to be able to connect two audiences, an in-room audience and the online audience, both able to chat and ask questions in the same space. I think was pretty useful. Go ahead, Chris.
So when Renee and Justine were coming in from Apple, I assume that's some sort of space that they had set up for press stuff.
No, they just set it up for us. No, I was kidding. No,
impressive, Lindsay.
Yeah. No. They had, that's a podcast studio. So WWDC in the past has had podcast studios that they build, and it's really, really designed around audio podcasts. I mean, there's some video capabilities, but it's really an audio podcast based system. And they've had that for years, 5 years or whatever. And that's a new one then that they built. But they build it new every year. So but it's always something a little bit different. That happened to be there and actually being used all day. Because we were doing it in the evening, we were able to just kind of glop onto it.
And was there multiple cameras available? I mean,
No.
You could, okay.
So it's really based as an audio podcast.
Right. So one of the things that I find frustrating as an editor, especially in a corporate realm, is a lot of times the desire for branding supersedes the desire for a good show. So that wide shot was really nice. Got the WWDC over here, got the little silhouettes over behind Renee, got this nice establishing shot. But after we saw that once, and maybe once 30 minutes later, we could have, somebody possibly, I'm imagining there was another human around, could have just said, it just pushed past all the branding stuff. I just want to see the people.
Yeah, so we played with that beforehand, and the real issue there was that it just felt really cut off. It didn't feel like kind of cut off. Because it was so wide, even if you brought it in to include two people. Now, if it had been one person, I would have absolutely gone and plugged it in. With two people, we can only zoom in a little bit from where we were. And so then it just ended up uncomfortable, and I didn't feel like we really bought anything with it. So we did push it in a little bit, but when you frame them, the way that, because they were kind of social distanced apart. So when
Yeah,
they were
I was
sitting,
going to ask if that was an issue.
I don't know.
Like,
So they were already a pretty far apart, and then so we pushed in a little bit, and it just didn't, like, I felt like it was like this much, like we went in a little bit to frame the chairs. And so I felt like I'm not buying anything, and now the frame looks all messed up, so I was just like, and it, so I that's why I pushed back out again, was just that the frame looked nicer, and I didn't feel like I bought enough to pay for the change. But it was definitely a conscious decision to leave it there. But I do think, and the hard part when you do multiple cameras is if you don't have tallies and you don't have people that are used to working with tallies, you end up with everyone looking off frame all the time, like they're all, and so that having 3 cameras, I don't think would have helped me very much, in that realm. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm thinking that we should also manage our constituency. I think we need to make sure that whatever we do, as many things as we do, that we're striking a resonant tone with our viewers and our listeners. And like, for example, I'll start and work backwards. WWDC, I thought the first meeting was interesting. I just remember M2 and Craig Federighi's hair. Those things sort of stood out to me. Everything else sort of turned into kind of noise at the Apple event. But, it's good to be thorough. But it's possible we may get to a point where we have so many things going on at the same time, like right now, that we can't do the best job we can to cover them. So the question would be, what do we cover? What do we talk about? How deep do we dive into each one of these particular categories and manage that? Because I think we're really stressing the heck out of our back-end crew here just with what we're doing now.
Yeah, I think that it's a good point. I think that the WWDC one we're going to do every year. We add way more people to our little group through that than anything else that we do. The third day, the Wednesday with 3D from DubDub was the biggest, was the most viewed live that we've had all year. Like just to be like, it's we can, I'm just giving you the raw math.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
So most viewed, like that third one, which I thought, I didn't even know if people would show up for it. And it was, I don't know. And I don't know what the referrals or how it happened that way, but I can tell you that that one was remarkably popular. Also, we're used to having 500 or 800 people watch. The Monday night one was seen by 50,000 people, so it's not, so it's just at an entirely different scale, than what we're, than what we're working on. So I think that, so that the other thing is that you'll notice that well, you may not notice this, but I'm trying to build ecosystems inside of our group. And one that we're missing is coding capabilities. So we have some people that know how to code. We need more. We need more people that know how to code. Because it's just an integral part of a community of what we do is developers, of being able to build applications that, or build tools that we need. And we've benefited greatly from the fact that we have a close relationship. We had a close relationship with Liminal, and now, and with that team, we have a close relationship with Atem Tao. We have a close relationship with developers, and we want to keep on building that up, because it's not just they build apps for us. It's that when they're building apps, we have a close relationship with Isadora. We have a close tech. So I think that those are the Trickotronics is paying attention to us. And that means that we get things and things work out for us more effectively. So I think that is an important piece of that ecosystem. In the same way that 3D, I believe, is being able to do 3D AR. Those are future. That's why Wednesdays are going to keep on leaning more and more towards AR, photogrammetry, 3D, so on and so forth, because it's not that we have enough people yet. It's that we need them, and so we need second hours that attract them into the community. And so, we don't want to become a monoculture. And that's what other people do on the internet. And it's a mistake, because we need the interaction between all these different groups. So, I've chosen WWDC mostly because Apple is by far the most elegant AV solutions. Like they're building subsystems that are way more advanced than. I mean, I have to stream to all the platforms. So I'm super clear of who is good at this and who is not. like who builds operating systems that make it easy for me to do high-end next generation HDR and sound and everything else, and who doesn't. And Apple does it and nobody else does. Like that's why we're focusing on Apple. We're going to keep on focusing on Apple, because as a person who has to work with all the platforms, I'm deeply frustrated by the other platforms. Like to the point where I don't even YouTube is managing a lot of things well. So that's a different situation where we have HDR. We're potentially having other things coming down the road. But as far as like other like coding bases or anything else, like I just don't have any interest, because it's just they're just so far behind. Like I don't know if they're ever going to catch up, because they're a bunch of big companies that aren't paying attention. So anyway, so we're going to focus more on the Apple platform because of that, because it's moving much faster in that direction than anybody else. And it's got 5 years it's moving faster, and it's got 5 years ahead of everybody else. So anyway, so that's the calculation, there. So we want to attract more people that can do that. And the way to do that is to serve that community. Anytime you want to get into a community, figure out a way to serve it. We have definitely not figured it out yet, it's definitely, but it is the most popular week of the year for us. So even though we haven't, I don't think we've cracked the code, it's still more popular than anything else we do. So go ahead, John.
A couple of things. First of all, hats off to the production team, and tomorrow, right? I'll be on that panel as well. So we're getting better and better. One of the interesting things that used to be really engaging, it was either CNET or Twitter, maybe both. But they had these glass booths where they would send the producers out to shoot in a booth, and then they'd come back and do the edits in these glass booth. There was more guys watching the editor's work than there was watching the stage.
Yeah.
People talking on the stage. It was really cool.
I think that I want to do more and more. I mean, I love the idea of doing more and more transparent production where people get to just watch us build that. I think these ones were so busy that we had a hard time kind of building out the low level of transparent production that I'd like to do. But I think that by, within the next couple of months, what I'd really like to do is get to a point where any show that we do, there's behind the scenes. I mean, there is technically one for this. If you join the people who are working on the show every day, you can see the back end. I mean, it's, you just have to let them know that you want to do that. But I want to do that for everything so that people can see how those things come together, I think is important. And so, yeah. And it's also a great way to teach people how to do it. It's a lot of fun and people love it. And I do think that we could get to a point where a lot of our shows have more people watching on the back end than on the front end, because it's I find, again, when we look at like the dub stuff, I think that I find WWDC or the keynote. I find the keynote more fun to watch with everyone here than going. A lot of times I have the opportunity to go to these keynotes. I choose to hang out with all of you instead of going to the keynotes, because it's more fun. It's more fun for me. So to go to the to hang out with everyone here and have those conversations rather than just watch the content by myself or with folks in a venue. So I think that it is a I think that we want to keep down. I do think that one thing that I feel like we're doing really well, and I think that makes what we do different, is the panel. The fact that you're watching something and then between the shows you have a group of experts that are all talking about that thing. And I think that could be applied to many things. Like you could do an e-learning conference where you have a bunch of e-learning experts in a panel. We're watching sessions, but you're getting that second ear experience. You're getting stuff in between those sessions. You're getting, so I think the contextual nature of what we're doing, I don't think we've cracked it completely, but I do think that the excellent work that's been done on the ground, mixed with the excellent input from the panel, is going to continue to get much better. And I think it's a kind of show that we've never seen before. Like that we really, of a way to cover things. And so I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's not the only thing. I mean, CNN covers the election night and so on and so forth in a similar way. But I think that when it comes to covering these kinds of conventions and so on and so forth, it's special. Next question.
Christian Turry from London, UK. So not a question, but feedback on the second ear event. There was not much commentary. It wasn't watchable on YouTube without having the WWDC feed synchronized at the same time, and it wasn't on Zoom either, so I didn't like it.
Go, Bill.
I hear what you're saying, and it was hard for us, I think, as panelists too, because I know I was sitting there thinking to myself, every time I make a comment, particularly if it's more than just an interjection, then I am pulling them from the keynote, which is a lot of dense information coming out smoothly, to what I'm saying. And if we get into a discussion, as we did a few times, you're pushing them back even further, and the audience can theoretically lose more ground against the real-time program. So I almost thought to myself, boy, it would be great to be able to freeze the last thing said, have a little window of commentary. And I know that means that the growing file or the stream keeps getting pushed later and later the farther we go into it. But that split of we're talking about this, something potentially interesting is going on in real time, and there's no real way to catch up, was frustrating.
I mean, I feel like the thing I'm trying to create is the idea that you're just hanging out with a bunch of really smart people that are watching. Sometimes we're commentating, sometimes we're not. And, you know, I think that this is a hard one to do, that second-ear experience, because it's the densest one. What we found, we've done these in after hours for the last year or year and a half, and I think that, I think that it's been one of those things that some of them we talk all the time because there's stuff to talk about, and other ones there is less to talk about because really, and it's also, to what Bill's saying, it's very dense. So you feel like you're talking over something. You know, we know there was very little fluff in the last one. It was very dense. A lot of times there's fluff. You know, there's here's how the business is going and the ecological impact, and those are usually places we spend a lot of time talking. like we're like, well, there's no new features here, so we'll just keep on. We can talk over all of those things. So and as press, we often look forward to some of those updates because it gives us time to type. You know, so anyway, so I think that those are I think that we'll see what happens in the fall. Of course, we expect the next keynote. We'll probably try to do this again, but we expect the next keynote to be, you know, early September. And I mean, if they do what's traditionally an Apple event in the early September, we'll do it again and see if we can't make it better. Go ahead, Bill.
I think you solved one of the key problems, because it was great as a panelist having the live in comms in my ear the whole time, and knowing that I was on an equal footing with everybody else in terms of when they announced something, I knew about it. That made me feel much more confident than the last couple of times when I've been 15 or 20 seconds delayed, and I didn't feel like I could comment on anything because somebody would go, wow, and I'd go, wow, what? Nothing just happened. Right. Oh, it did happen for them 15 seconds ago.
And again, that's the hard part with the hard part for everybody else is they are still not connected to our time necessarily. So I can see that would be a problem. Part of this is also a terms of service issue. Like, we don't really want to step on Apple's toes about how we produce it. You will get a takedown pretty quickly if you put it up on YouTube Live. You know, so doing what we're doing kind of fits inside the rules as well. Go ahead, Mitchell.
You mean we can't do a Mystery Science Theater version?
No.
For the keynote?
Well, we are doing a Mystery Science Theater as a second year.
We need the outlines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be fun. we could probably comp that together. Do
we have to send in pictures of the back of our heads?
Oh my gosh. Okay, we have to think about that. We have to think about mystery. We might have to go back to after hours for those, and then do Mystery Science Theater version, and we could probably do something with Isadora where if you're talking, it'll see that you're talking, and active speaker just vibrates your little head. You know, like we have a little, oh my gosh. So I think, okay, this must be done. We have time between now and September. So our new version of this will be Mystery Science Theater with the crew. It'll be only in after hours so that we can put it into the system. And we're going to put little profiles of everybody's heads. And then we got to figure out how to get Isadora to use active speaker to tell us which one, just the head has to just bobble a little bit like we're talking. Maybe even use the waveform, maybe even use the volume to like attenuate the vibration. So if you talk really loud, it'll bounce up and down. Okay.
We need to drop in some sound effects. So like when they announce something big, ta-da,
I want a keystroke where I either throw my popcorn and my soda at the screen.
Yeah, there we go.
Exactly. Okay, we're gonna have to. Okay. There's some thought process there. Okay, we'll work on that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael at macOS Ventura supports Rosetta within Linux VMs on Apple Silicon Macs natively. With VMware being purchased by Broadcom, could you see an enterprising developer building a Fusion alternative based on Apple's native framework?
Possibly, but there'd be no reason to do it. They just use a PC. Like, I just don't think they'd do it on a Mac if they, I don't think it would give them anything. Next question.
John Snyder, Reno, Nevada. What are the lowest hanging fruit for improving office hours coverage of events?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I'm not, there's plenty of low hanging fruit, but I am still astonished at how quickly these teams behind the scenes, I mean, I've been in these meetings for Cinegear, and the effort and the thoughtfulness and the brilliance of people trying to address all these things. I think we're moving as fast as we possibly can. I think Alex's, iterate a lot and fail forward is really helping us, but there's only so much pace you can work at when this isn't our full-time job. We're all just coming to it to try to increase the success of every part of this. And I know there is low-hanging fruit, and I know we could identify it, but every time I think about that, I just think about, but even pulling people to do that little thing, which would probably be easy, takes them away from this really complex thing they're trying to invent and do in the back end, which is near miraculous in my thinking.
Go ahead, John.
A couple interesting things. Super important to have somebody that's hosting be knowledgeable. Do they know about the company that they're interviewing? Do they know the people? That was the good thing about Jeffrey, is he knew a lot of those people in those booths. So that was super helpful. One of the other interesting things is the interaction. So when we were going through some of the questions where they had the iPad and the guest was able to read the questions on the iPad, one of the questions was deleted and the guy remembered what the question was and read it out. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
It's interesting to see as we innovate and develop on our way forward, because I think we're quickly becoming a thing. And since we're on the bleeding edge of this, of the way of doing this, I think we'll finally realize that we're onto something when other people try to start copying what we're doing.
The interesting thing is, I think it'll be very hard to copy. Like the scale at which we're starting to work at, I think will be very, very difficult for anybody else to replicate, because it's taken 800 versions of this to get us to get good at talking about this stuff. And I think it'll be almost impossible for somebody else. And again, I don't think it's necessarily competitive with other folks. They have their own little teams that are going to do stuff that's there. I think that we do have the potential of becoming probably the biggest game in town when it comes to covering these events, because we just have, I think we'll get to a point where there's 50 to 100 people working on it, around the world, and there's, 8 to 10 that are on the ground. Everybody else just has 8 to 10 on the ground. so it's, so I think that that's going to be difficult, but I don't think that necessarily takes away from anything else. There's plenty of coverage that's all being sponsored by many other things. So I don't think that it really affects anybody else. I do think that it gives us the opportunity to have kind of a positive effect on the industry of highlighting things that people can see. I think that the lowest hanging fruit is getting a couple more people on the ground so that we can have a second team roaming around, allowing the large tank to get from one place to the other. We just need more infantry, that gets, that goes and grabs, we're kind of the air power here. Like we can, but those three things are always important. And so we need a smaller setup that can move from one thing to the other, that fills in between those things. I think that, I would probably say that I would love, the nature of the way we're covering it right now requires it to be a little slower, but I would recommend that no hit is longer than 10 or 15 minutes, in any given location. And we really try to keep it going. If we want them to be there, if we want to talk to them longer than 10 or 15 minutes, I think we should get them on for a second hour. Like we can do that anytime, so long. So I would shorten our coverage to the things that, because I think that what we miss is the opportunity. I mean, we can bring any of these companies on for a second hour at this point. I mean, like everybody says yes, so it's not, that's not a hard, people are pinging me like, when do I get on? And so So we can get these brands on anytime we want to talk for an hour. So, the big thing is taking advantage of the fact that they're all in one place at one time and getting the breadth of the thing and figuring out what we're interested in, I think is more important at the locations than any kind of in-depth discussions. And so we have that all year. And that's what other groups don't have, is that we meet every day. So I think that, shortening those, getting a second kit, I think that getting the interaction a little bit cleaner to the location, I think that is better. I would love to get back to the host holding an iPad. The reason is that that's a cue for the audience. So what we have found is that the host holding their iPad to ask the questions typically increases the number of questions by 3 times. Like it's a visual thing that I'm reading a question from you, as opposed to, there's a temptation to want to give them hands free. And that tends to actually it tends to generate more questions when they look down at an iPad and people are clear that they're pulling them down. It's more theater than it is necessary, but I would recommend that just from other events that we've done. So I think that those are some of the things that I would look at, in that area. I would tighten up the sound, we still have kind of I was very kind to get this up. We just need a mic plug, for our mics. Like I just need a transmitter, which I'm happy to pay for, just to go into the end of the mics. It has as much to do with optics as the big thing is that we have to look at, as we go forward, to be, it's probably more of a Sunday discussion, but as we move forward, the cleaner it looks on screen, the easier it is to send it to other vendors to ask them to be part of it. If it looks like anything is an art project, it degrades our ability to get things in the future. So we just have to always look at whatever's in front of camera has to look like broadcast all the time. Like it just, and it shouldn't look any other way. It shouldn't be inventive. It shouldn't be whatever people you want to get. We're already doing a bunch of other things that are special, but whatever is in front of us can't look like anything other than what we would normally see. Go ahead, Bill.
I think Alex articulated a lot of it. It's not, we don't need to know anything else about what the low-hanging fruit is. We know all of that. It's just execution. I mean, we got hit pretty hard this year with key people, just COVID or something, causing us difficulty. And we are scrambling and are able to scramble to make good coverage work, even when we're down to one team in the field. That amazes me. But it would be a whole different thing if we had 2 or 3 teams out there doing these. We're also doing this with zero budget, which I think is pretty astonishing.
I'm outlining the things that are low-hanging fruit of where we can do it. The fact that we've done what we've done over the last week is pretty amazing. I mean, the amount of work, I think people should not underestimate the amount of work it takes to get done, especially, Noah and some of the team members that have just put incredible amounts of time, effort, gear, everything into it is an amazing thing, and so I don't want to undermine. I'm always just looking. I can tell you what the gap is for every show that I work on. like every show I've got like we rewrote parts of Mokana last night because of a show I did yesterday that I didn't, there was a bunch of things that were missing, and Chris in his Zane, Chris just wrote, I said, we're missing this, and this, and within, 45 minutes it was updated. So I think that, but we're always trying to, we never want to say, well, it was great for what we had. We always want to say, this is what we want to do next. But I don't want to ignore the fact that what we've done is amazing, and we're going to see it. I'm very clear we're going to see this grow into something really big because of the team members that are working on it right now. Go ahead, Mitchell.
What you just said, there's some value to that, because we should have an idea of how much would it cost to do this. If somebody actually had to figure out a budget and figure out what was being spent to do the coverage, it's a good exercise to have mentally. And it might also explain why other people aren't doing it, because we got it covered with passion.
Yeah. And I think that, we learn a lot as we keep on doing them, and we learn a lot. So we're getting something out of it to that degree of production. We're getting to meet each other. And eventually as a group, the value for us is that we can keep on pushing our group as a whole more into the forefront. People pay more attention to us, which means that we have better guests. We get more access. We get, that type of thing. So it improves for everybody, that area. But these are expensive. I mean, typically, if someone brought us in to do it, I don't have the exact numbers, but it's like $150,000, $200,000, to do the coverage. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. What change for these kinds of hybrid coverages are you contemplating for Mukana?
I mean, the big thing the main thing is just working with everybody to figure out what's the best display for the host and the people on site of how to just for what they can see. I think that's the big thing that we want to keep on improving with what Mukana does, is just making sure that people on site have exactly what they need. And I know Chris has been working with the team to build specific customized views of what that looks like. The other thing that we need to be able to do is, and we didn't quite have it done for these ones, but to be able to load lots of questions and flush the system very quickly. So we're at a booth, here's all the questions for that booth. Then you hit a button and it gets rid of all those questions, and we hit another button and brings all the new questions in. And that kind of thing is so that you can just move faster through that system. I think that's something that will probably be done in the next couple of weeks. Next question.
Chris Widener again. Would it be possible to embed the office hours feed and the Apple feed on one page for next year's coverage? Would we need to get Apple permission for that?
We would need to get Apple permission for that, and they would not give it to us. like I'm just letting you know, yes, we would have to ask for it, and no, they will not say yes. They routinely talk to folks who start embedding the keynote into other places. They prefer the original version to be seen in the format that they choose. And so it's not there's one of those things of understanding where you are in the food chain. It's so you don't need to pick fights I think that we can build something that's very watchable without breaking any TOS. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael again. Why do you think Apple dropped support for the 2013 Mac Pro in Ventura?
Go ahead, Mitchell. We'll do this one real quick because this is more about the show than about the tech.
As an owner of a 2015 Mac Pro, I think Apple just wants us to move on. They want to keep moving the culture and the capabilities on.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, 9 years old. Nobody's going to make money on selling 9-year-old computers.
Well, and also it's just that you don't want to hold up the development of the new features because you're trying to make it available for the old. I really don't think it has to do with money for Apple. The Macs are such a small percentage of their income that I just don't think it's really just about engineering resources and how much time do you spend making sure that it goes back X amount of time. And every computer that it goes back is another, like a bunch of code that you can't get rid of in your current operating system. I personally think that Apple should only look back 5 years. If it was me, I would just have this moving window that says we're not going to support anything more than 5 years old with the new operating system. If you don't like it, stick with the old operating system, and we'll keep on updating that one for X amount of time. But I think new OSs should really just be totally focused on the present and the future. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. Was the two-person camera shot in 4K? Could you have cropped 2 shots out of it?
I have to admit, I don't like cropping 4K shots. I find that I just get a lot of profiles. I mean, I really always want to have another one that's going to get close-ups and isn't exactly from the same frame. So I think we could. I don't think I would. Go ahead, Mitchell.
It wouldn't have looked as good. And the other thing is that it wouldn't have picked up a product shot, for example. So I'd rather see you spend the resources accordingly.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
We're talking about the 2-shot from Renee and Justine.
Oh, I don't know, actually. I guess it would be that. I was thinking of NAM. I think I was in a different mode, but you could do that. We weren't getting it, it's coming over Zoom, so they would have had to crop it there. We have done it. It actually doesn't work that badly. In that frame, to your point, it wouldn't have been that bad. We'd have to zoom in a little bit. We have done that with 3 people, and we have singles on each one of them. There's a piece of software that AJA sells. It's like 25, or hardware. It's like $25,000 that'll do this. And it'll zoom in on them in software, and you just push the button and it just animates over and animates to here. And if they're all looking at that camera, what we did is we put a teleprompter with all their notes on one camera that had the 4K image. And we were at the time cropping to 720. That's all we needed to do. And it actually worked really well. And we thought, we should buy this, but we just didn't have enough people asking for that feature. So if they're all focused on one camera in front of them and they really are looking at them, looking at that camera and really doing it, you can actually pull this off. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Were you going to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to say that I thought that Justine and Renee did a good job of not, we always talk about when you have people in the same frame, they get their own little show between them, and then the camera becomes the second-class citizen. And I thought they both did a really good job at engaging with the rest of the show. Did they have a big floor monitor or a prompter that they were looking at that had the rest of the show?
I didn't get a behind-the-scenes photo. It's a little bit of a mystery to me what that looked like.
I'm so upset.
I wasn't there. Next question.
Josh Kaufman from Pittsburgh, PA. Keeping the Mukana and YouTube links from the Office Hours show into event coverage brings the regular viewers into the event. If the event coverage is later split into its own YouTube video, will aid future discovery. The same could be done with shorts clips.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know sometimes about how much people would go back and look at. I definitely plan as we go into the second half of the year to do more YouTube short clips, but they're really designed to be short clips. They're not like short clips grabbed out of our live coverage. And maybe I'm underestimating the value of the live coverage, but a lot of times I feel like, I do feel like the chaptering is important. I think that, and again, it all comes down to also effort, level of effort. Who's gonna cut it every single time. And the other thing you keep in mind is that as soon as you do it once, everybody expects it. So I have a tendency to move very slowly here, because one of the reasons we don't add features is not because we can't do it once, it's because we can't do it every day. And so I think about how sustainable any action is over a year of the way we do things. And it's very easy to build a bunch of things, and then people get upset. They're like, oh my gosh, they used to do this thing, it was great, and now they don't do it anymore, and this sucks, and excuse me, but this is whatever. And so so I think that that's the issue that I get into, is that it's what I call managing expectation inflation. Because the other problem that you have when you start creating things like that is, as soon as someone can see here, as soon as they get to here, they can see there, right? And so there's a whole bunch of things that I would do with Office Hours if we had more money. With enough money, we would boil the ocean. Because I know what to do next. I just don't have the resources to do that. So I'm very careful, and we've extended our resources dramatically because of the incredible work by everybody here. The people on the back end of this show, the people covering these events, the panelists that show up, everything else. We've done more with less money than I've ever seen anybody do ever. It's just like an enormous, maybe Habitat for Humanity might beat us out by a little, but I think that it is an incredible feat that we've done already. But I'm very conscious of any feature addition that I can't sustain. That we can't sustain well, because I know that as soon as we start doing something here again, everyone will immediately look, and I'm over here. I can see all these things that we could be doing. It drives me crazy. But I have to kind of just wait for us to figure out how to do that sustainably. Go ahead, Chris. You didn't have anything else? Next question.
Next question from Bill Thompson in Columbia, South Carolina. Seems the dev focus gets diluted by the consumer broadcast. Yes, hardware drives everything, but 90 minutes devoted to dev-specific info would be welcomed with the gee whiz Apple customer focus split off into a separate event.
Go ahead, Bill.
In the traditional structure of conventions, this was the keynote address, and keynotes is usually about strategy, not about tactics. This is a 3-day thing, and they do tons of those tactical discussions that are focused. So I think this is appropriate. This is the broad stroke of, in a year past, we're going to do this thing called Sidecar, and here's what it looks like, and it's really cool. You can use your iPad as a second monitor. That's enough to tell people in that introduction strategically.
Yeah, I will say that my plan is to actually, what I thought about this year that we didn't do is we probably will turn Monday into an entire coverage day where we talk about what we want to see. We see the keynote. We then bring developers in right after the keynote and do what we did. I kind of want to move possibly what the evening's a little easier because it gives us a little time to talk about it, but we bring a bunch of developers in to talk right after the keynote until State of the Union happens. Then we do the same thing with State of the Union. Then we go into the after State of the Union. We talk about it, mull it over a little bit more, and then do the evening session, with that's kind of higher profile. And so I think that would allow us to cover the general, but then get into all this nitty gritty of things that we saw coming out and really turn it into a whole day. And we may do that more than what I've been playing with is the idea that we may do a crazy Monday and then a Thursday session that is like a second hour. That's what else did we see there during the week, but not so do more on Monday and then do less on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then have Thursday be kind of the sweep it all up of things that we saw in that period of time. Maybe a second and third hour if the third hour is necessary. But that's one of the things I've been thinking about as far as that goes. But it also depends on what kind of physical access we get in the future, because it would be fun to be on at DubDub covering it in more detail too. Because the thing is, if we were able to put a booth, for instance, or some kind of presence at DubDub, we could be bringing developers in, and developers came back to a physical environment. We could be having developer discussions all day. Like just schedule them all up because you got thousands of them there. So it'd be really interesting. Lots of round tables and stuff like that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, with the host holding an iPad, wouldn't we need a native iOS Mukana front end? Could a native front end bring any advantages?
Native would be nice. The web version works great. Like we use the web version of the Post app all the time. It doesn't look like anything you've seen. Like it's a different interface. So there's like a whole bunch of interfaces for Mukana that we just don't use in this show. So, but the web version works really well. And there's a teleprompter version. There's a bunch of other things. Next question.
From Bill Thompson, Columbia, South Carolina. Pardon if this has been a topic of discussion in the months I was OHAWOL. But is there a sense that Apple is farther down the road to obvious and actionable monopoly by going with the, I forget what that is, SoC silicon exclusivity route?
I don't think they only sell less than 10% of the computer market. So the thing right now is Apple doesn't have a monopoly anywhere. They are a small percentage of computer sales. They are a small percentage of Android of phone sales. They don't control it. They don't control anything from a traditional monopoly situation. The thing that makes them so big is that the places that they do have access, even just that small percentage they make a lot more revenue than everybody else, because they have a much more elegant solution than everybody else. so it's, when you look at they have the advantage of being more efficient. And so I think that makes them really, really large, and they're in a lot of different plates, and they can expand at will, because most companies are driven by how do we make money first, and then how do we get people to buy it? Like it really is driven the opposite direction. And Apple is very driven by if we serve the consumer, money will come out the other end. Like if we take care of it, we protect them. If we do, they have a much different view of it than everybody else. And that means they can move into almost any market, because most of these companies, are not well thought out. A good example of something that works really well is Google AdWords. Google AdWords work because it actually costs less money if you do a better ad and a better landing. That's why all those tracking pixels are important to everybody. It's because you can pay less for the ad because it's more effective. So Google paid a lot of attention to the user experience, and then as a result, they have something that works really well. But I think that Apple is just moving down the path. But I don't think they have a traditional view of a monopoly anywhere. So I think that they can keep on doing what they're doing for quite some time. But their market weight is bigger. They punch much higher than punch way above their weight. Next question.
From Bill Thompson again in Columbia, South Carolina. We touched on NAMM coverage, which is near and dear to my heart, though we're headed into Infocom. He might mean Cinegear there, which seems more essential and mature to office hours. Is there a team dispatched to take it in?
So we chose not to cover Infocom because it was just, we had gotten to a saturation point where we just didn't have enough people to cover everything that was available. And somehow all these events ended up right on top of each other. Usually they're spread out just a little, a little more than they are this time. And so we chose not to do that. And it mostly has to do with the fact that especially with those, there's very few of us that know Infocom very well. And for those of you who don't, Infocom is kind of like the NAB for IT, or NAB for corporate, and that's how I view it anyway. And I do agree that Infocom would have been good to cover in more detail. And we might do it next year if we had enough teams. I mean, we could. It's that our teams are still pretty young doing this, and I just don't think we're ready for that. I think next year we could be ready to have teams do all of those things. So one of the things I am trying to do is figure out a way to get enough funding that we can take care of people's hotels and flights and stuff like that, so that a team could come and do NAMM, and then we could pay to move them. So it's not all them, and we could pay to move them to Vegas and then pay to move them back to LA or whatever. And there's a team that covers all of these events or whatever. And I think that could be in our future. So we're just trying to, again, us doing really good work right now and building great content and clean content sets us up for finding someone that'll help underwrite things in the future. And that's why I'm so focused on, it's better to do it cleanly than to do a lot of it or to do too many things. It's really just a good, clean output makes a huge difference. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, and essential in nature, I mean, you can argue either way. If you were actually thinking about Cinegear, I'm really looking forward to the fact that we will have a smaller physical thing to cover, because obviously in NAMM, one of our biggest issues was if they're going to go to tailored, they're walking for a long time. And we saw that. It informed us about some of the coolness of having cameras on a walk through the show. And I wish we had extra teams, because we would be doing more of that in the coverage of Cinegear coming up. But I'm looking forward also to seeing if we can increase the density of the stuff we put out, because you can really turn a camera 180 degrees and get a second useful show thing, because it's just not so spread out.
And I have to admit, for my coverage, when I've done it in the past, the one of the big secrets to what I did was that I never walked more than 2 booths. I would build my little map of what I was going to do. And it was always like I could be to the next booth in a minute, and so I would never do 2 shows, 2 things. I would never go to 2 different halls between things. And generally, again, not even 2 different, when I designed what I did, I wouldn't go more than 2 booths. I'd look at who am I going to cover within a 2 booth radius of the booth I'm covering. And a lot of booths, if they were off in the distance and they weren't surrounded by other booths, I just didn't cover them because I was like, I literally don't have a string. Like I would just literally, as I did these, I would look at drawing a string that, through the thing. And if I couldn't find a string that included that booth, it oftentimes I would shoot some video of it, but I wouldn't do it live. So the live ones were all threaded, that I wouldn't have to walk very far between each one, because I just didn't have any way to fill the dead time. We have a better way to fill the dead time, but when I was doing it, I had to keep talking while I was going from one to the other, because it was just me and a live view and a camera operator with a live view on their backpack and me with a wireless camera, and that was it. We just wandered from one to the next. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I think the ground crew had requested that a production assistant or producer on the floor could be busy setting up the next shot and getting the permissions so that the crew could roll over to there and not have to start over each.
And we've definitely done that in the past. I mean, we definitely have lit up folks in the past where we had someone running ahead of it. If I was going to take 2 groups, though, if I had more people on a group, if I had an extra 1 or 2 people, I would have a roaming crew before I'd put more infrastructure around a single output. Because I think that a second crew covering is really important. It's even with a phone, it'd be really important to be able to have a second crew roaming around. It would double or triple the density of which we can work. So,
or a booth would be nice.
Well, I think we talked about this, last week, that if I was going to design this any way I wanted, I would most likely have 2 days before the event to cover. The second hours would be really covering releases that have already come up, because a lot of these companies start releasing stuff the week before. And so we would just cover that. So we've already talked about some of those things. Then I would have a booth on that was there. Then I would have the heavy crew, like the one that was used at NAMM. Then I would have either 2 or 3 light crews, and 1 or 2 of them would be live. The other one would just be grabbing packages. And again, I would do them packages in the way that I do them, which is no editing. Like they literally, you head and tail them and they're ready to go, and And I think we could do camera to cloud stuff with Filmic Pro in a rig to just have these things just popping up, on the other side as we gather them. And I think that that mixture of things would create a very, along with the panel, along with Mukana, would build a very dense, experience for a viewer, more dense than we've ever seen any event coverage before. And so I think it's just a matter. And we were very close to that. We designed that for NAB 2000 or 2020 or 2021 or whatever that didn't happen. We had some folks that were willing to give us some space and hardware and stuff like that. And it just didn't happen. it just turned out to not. So we're pretty close to being able to do that kind of thing. Anyway, so yeah. Okay. Well done. We're going to do another one tomorrow. So if you're watching here, Cinegear starts right after our second hour. So we'll have 2 hours of Q&A on Saturday. And then we're going to go into Cinegear and do some coverage of what's going on. I'm hoping to stick around a little bit for it. I really like watching from the outside and getting out of everybody's way, but I may jump in and out here and there to get a feel of what it's like to be on the inside as well. But I've been enjoying watching them on YouTube. And so we'll see how that goes. Thank you to our producers for all the great questions and comments. And thanks to our panelists. Of course, we can't do this without you. And we also can't do it without the incredible staff in the back end. And you're going to see all these names pop up. And it's quite a community that puts this together every single day, 7 days a week. It's just amazing. So thanks to everyone that's involved. All right. And now we're going to go into After Hours. Do we have Mitchell in the credits? So that we can all whisper.
Your audio is a little low, Alex.
You're talking too loud. You just hurt my ears. Why?
I'm with Chris. I'll just talk low.
Oh, it's so annoying. Gotta learn how to whisper.
What?
All
Mitchell,
fine.
the
Fine, I'm
thumbnail for
leaving.
this show is great. If they don't
Thank you,
change it.
Chris. I appreciate that.
Did you see it?
Yes.
It's very funny. So I modeled a whole apple